Well, welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are diving back into the Fable of Happiness by Pepper Winters. Now, if you haven't listened to the first book in this series, which is literally called Book One, that review is going to be listed down below in the description section. Once you finish that, come and join us as we dive into, yes, it's literally just named Book Two. We start from the POV of Cassine, and he's falling. And his thing is, when people say that right before you die, your whole life flashes before you, he's like, that doesn't happen. Different times he's been about to die, and that's never happened, and it's not happening now. Um, he describes different situations when he was at that brothel house and how they would do things to him that would bring him close to death, and he didn't think about his whole life. And he feels like that's probably because he's always just been trying to forget his life, that when it's time for the end to come, he's just going to be able to go ahead and just go. He does think about Gemma and the fact that maybe if he didn't try to trap her, that they could have possibly had something. Maybe things could have been different. Maybe he could have even fallen in love. And he, of course, is feeling all this pain as he's dropping down and hitting stones. And he just allows his body to go limp, just bracing for death. We switch to Gemma. And she, of course, is in shock. She's thinking, oh my gosh, like, what if he's dead? Like, there's no way he could have survived that fall. And at the same time, she's thinking, what if he's alive? If he's alive, that's the part that scares her because she's not sure what she'll do. So, poor thing, just freaking out. So, she didn't push him. He tripped and he fell back. But she still feels like it's her fault because she had trespassed, and this all started with her trespassing. And then her fighting to get away, and this is what caused him to fall back. And so she decides she's going to go down, see what's going on with him one way or the other. Remember, she's our climber, and she knows how to get down there safely. So she has her backpack with her. She's got everything. So she glances and she looks and she's like, oh gosh, he's probably dead. He looks so still. But then when she gets down there, she puts her ear to him, and there's a faint little pulse. He's still alive. Um, but the way he was, she could just tell that he wasn't trying to fight to survive. It looked like he just let his body relax. But that's what they tell you you're supposed to do anyway when you're falling. But she also knows that wasn't the reason he did that. He didn't do that for that reason. He did it because he had given up. He was just going to let the inevitable happen. And so then she decides she is going to take him home. And so she makes a stretcher for him with like these two tree branches. They're like these skinny trees. She cuts them, and she cuts up her a part of her bag or something she had in her bag, and she's making a makeshift stretcher, and she's going to pull him up. Even though he's heavy as hell, she's going to pull him back and take him back home. We switch back to our boy Cassine, and he's having a dream, but his dreams are not dreams. They are things that actually happen. And he thought back to the night that he made sure all this shit was going to end, okay? So Fable was, of course, brought to fruition by like 20 people, these high powered people in society. They wanted to have a place where they could go, no one could easily access, and they could do all these explicit, deplorable things to people who couldn't fight back. We'll say it that way. And so Storymaker runs the place. He doesn't look like he would run this type of place. He's an extremely cruel man, but he's like long and lean, wears thin glasses, nice beard. He looks like he's a sweet old man, but he's evil beyond. And he even has them chant things like saying to your guests, how grateful you are to have them here, like all this type of crap, knowing that these people are going to do awful, horrible things to them. All of the guests are coming tonight because it's the anniversary of this sick fucking place. And he's telling the workers, I don't even like to call them workers. I don't even know what to call them. Are they sex slaves? I don't even know what to call them. He's letting them know that, if they get tired, he'll give them medicine so they'll have energy, because they can't fall asleep on their guests, you know. Um they're going to want to play a lot, and you have to be prepared for that. And we find out that Cassine has decided tonight's the night. He's about to take all of these people out. He's decided this is it. This is the only way for this to stop. All of them they got to die. And so we also find out a little bit how this sick system works. So there's 20 people, and it's a lifetime membership. There's no leaving. Um, if someone dies, the others have to pay more. So I guess they don't get more people in. It's just these are the set folks, and if anyone dies, more people, more money has to come from the other people. Well, they are now down to 18. That's how many people are left. How many guests? And so they come through the cave, and that's what's happening. So he's having this flashback. Our girl Gemma is calling him Anon, like the climbing group that she's a part of, because she doesn't know his name, and being that that's how she got here from that group, that's what she starts to call him. We switch back to Gemma, and she's got him back in the house in the library. That's as far as she could bring him. Um, she's tried to pour water down his throat, to try and keep, he's still alive. But she can, he's having these violent nightmares. She goes to him. She asks him, she's like, please just wake up. Well, he does wake up. His eyes shoots open. He grabs her neck, and he's like, I'm going to kill you. And she's thinking like, oh gosh, I'm really going to die this time. Like, why haven't I learned my lesson when it comes to him, that I should not let him get near my throat? Then all of a sudden he goes limp, and he passes back out. And so she's like, you know what, I'm going to have to tie him up, because she can't risk this. So he did something. It was like she tried to tie him up, but then he said something that kind of made her feel like, okay, I can't treat him awful. I need to show him love. But I'm sorry, bitch, you just strangled me. No, I'm sorry, you bitch, you gotta get tied up. I'm sorry. So then we switch back to Cassine, and we find out what happened that night. So he's having the nightmare, aka flashback, technically. And so he went in the room with Mr. and Mrs. Is it Wilby? And Mr. Wilby had already popped his blue pill. So he's telling Cassine, like, give me your tight ass, and you can eat her, while I fuck you. He's ready. And she, of course, Miss Wilby, starts talking about how, at this point he's 19. He's been there for, I want to say, 9 years. So we already know this is how sick and twisted these people are. And she's wanted to bring him home, but Storymaker won't allow it. He's like, no, you can't take him. That's just not gonna happen. So again, these people are just, oh, it's so disgusting. Just nasty fucking people. Oh my gosh. So anyway, he's not hard, and so they're like, oh, we'll give you, you need a pill. Well, he know he can't do this if he's on that pill. So he says, no, 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 I can do it. So he goes down to uh jack his dick off, but he's got his hand on the knife that he stole from the kitchen. And he slits that bitch's throat. She couldn't even scream. The husband goes to jump on him. He slices his dick off and then slit his throat. I loved it. Listen, I kind of wish there would have been a little bit more payback on them for all the stuff they did to him. But being that they were so violent and so cruel and disgusting, I think those types in this situation, it was like, just get rid of them. Because if his plan is to take out everybody, baby, he got 16 more people to take out. So you need to be efficient at this point. He goes into every room, slashes everyone as he goes in each room. His one of his family members comes out with him and joins him as he goes in, but they don't participate in the killing. I think they're probably, you got to think, they've just been violated. They're in a whole nother space, and then they watch the person get taken out. I mean, I would have think they would have joined in and let's just take them out, but they've been conditioned for so long to be obedient and not to do certain things. And so it's very difficult for that type of conditioning to just be broken, right? It's easier for us to look at it and say, okay, why they just didn't join in? But they're conditioned. That's just what it is. So then it's time to, he's taking out everybody. It's time to take out Storymaker. Well, he's got to go through the two guards first. So he had told the family like to stay back, whatever, but they wanted to see this shit. So he took out the guards really quickly because the guards have gotten very lazy. They don't have to do too much. They may administer a little punishment, but they don't do too much. So he's quicker, right? And so he was able to shoot them, take their gun and shoot them both. It was simple. But then Storymaker is like, what are you doing? And he's all like, you're all going to be punished and all this type of shit. Because again, they're conditioned. He's trying to get them to back down and get that control again. And so, unfortunately, it's not going to work when it comes to Cassim. The other ones aren't doing anything, but at the same time, they're not stopping what Cassim is going to do. And so, we find out the guy, what is his real name? The Storymaker's real name is Stuart Page. Um, and he would do all kind of forms of torture to them, like really awful. And so he was like, of course, thinking he could say this stuff to them and they were just gonna turn and not allow Cassim to kill. Cassim filled him up with lead. Okay, so I'm like, okay, good. Even Cassim was like, he would have wanted to have tortured him some more, but right now it's about survival. So it's like, let's get this over with. So he comes to the present and he realizes he's in that same library and he's tied up and he's thinking, oh no, I failed. I didn't get everybody. And now one of them's got me and they're going to torture me again. They're going to make me pay. So he's going again in and out of reality. I feel bad for him because his mind is literally broken. Gemma is watching him, but she is on the other side of the room because listen, she got choked not too long ago. So she's not trying to go too close. Um but this time when he woke up, there was another personality, right? This sounds very schizophrenic. And this is the boy who he was before he got to Fables. Very kind. Um, she didn't want to wake him. You know, she's thinking, okay, is he sleepwalking? And she knows you're not supposed to like wake someone who's sleepwalking. So, uh, she's just kind of letting him talk, right? But at the same time, this is her opportunity to find out a little bit more information. So he begs her, he's like, you know, can you help me? Like he was like, did you hurt me or something like that? Because remember, he's effed up. He fell quite a distance. So he's a little broken physically as well. And he's just like, you can don't hurt anybody else. Don't hurt my brothers and sisters, Please just don't. And he said, I killed them all the members of Fables. And she had suspected that as much because she could tell that horrible abuse had occurred. And so she realized he's now back in that place. But it's now giving her more of a picture. You can assume some stuff, but now she's kind of getting that confirmation. Okay, this is what was truly going on. And they are, by the time this all went down, remember he's 19, so everyone's an adult at this point because they kept the same people, if I'm not mistaken, the same kids until they became adults. They never like went out and got new ones. And I wonder if that's because they just hadn't had the opportunity to do it. They probably were because they clearly liked young. So, it's just so much. He thinks, she's his new master and she's playing, games with him because, she was trying to help him because remember, he's really hurt. But he's like, what kind of sick game are you doing? And she's like, I'm not playing a sick game. My name's Jem. And, she had found out through him talking his name was Cassine. And so she called him that. And of course, that kind of did something for her because now she knew his name. Even though we know that name comes from a book, you know, she thinks that's his actual name and it gives her something, you know. But that book, it came from a book. It was a character named Cassine Sands, and he was a character that a genie had came to, and he never asked for anything like riches. He just wanted food for his family, things like that. And so his reward was like a lifetime of happiness. He had a wife, he had a kid, just a beautiful, happy life because he was so willing to sacrifice himself. And I don't know, it's kind of weird because I wonder if the guy gave him the character or if he picked it. I'm not sure. But you see what he does. He will sacrifice everything. He would take the abuse. He would take, you know, on their pain so they wouldn't have to feel it, even if it was for that one night. He would take as much as he could. So it's kind of crazy how they start to it's like they became those characters almost, is what it kind of appears to be to me. Gemma says to him, like, okay, you need to eat, X, Y, and Z. Um, but she couldn't untie him. She didn't want to. Um, because, she hated tying him up. But she didn't know what else to do. And he, of course, is saying to her, you said we were friends. If we're friends, why am I tied up? But, I mean, hey, She gotta do what she gotta do. So we switch back to Cass, and poor man, he's just going back and forth. You know, he's in the present, but he's still stuck in the past. He sees the food. It's like strawberries and carrots. He's like, "What is this?" He's like, Storymaker would never serve this to his guests. He thought he would get like a really nice meal. And she's like, okay, she's going to take on the role of being a guest because maybe that'll make him talk more. And at first he thought she might have been Kale. Quail, I think is how you say it. Quell. Kale, Quail, something like that. Which was one of, his technically his well, not technically, what he considered his siblings. Um, but then he realized it wasn't her. Um, and so he knows, okay, I took out all the guests, and he opens his eyes to the present, and he's like, what is going on? Like, she's giving me blankets, he's warm. He's like, this is weird. She gave him some pills to help with his swelling on his brain. Of course, he's having these awful headaches, and his ears are ringing. And she gave him some water. He drank it, tried to eat some of the food, but all of it came right back up. And then all of a sudden, everything went black to him again. We switch back to Gemma, and it's been 8 days of him going in and out, waking up crazy, thrashing, all kind of stuff. And then one day he woke up, and he wasn't like the other times. He seemed like the um oh, I think I said it wrong. This is when he woke up like the boy from before he got there. He was really nice to her. He was really sweet. He's like, my arm hurts. She made a splint for him. He looked at her, said she was really pretty. He asked her to go out with him. He's like, he tells her, when I feel better, I want to take you on a date to my favorite swimming hole. And she asked him where it was. He got upset because he couldn't remember. He kissed her, and she wound up giving in, and she kissed him back. And then he's like, my arm really hurts. And so she went back to tending to his arm. And then he went back out. And then she went around looking for her PLB and her cell phone because she knew um, Cass had taken it. She just didn't know where it was, and she'd been looking everywhere. And then finally she gets to where um, Cass sleeps. It's the dormitory. It's got about 10 beds on in there, and on each one of the beds is the Fable books, which is where they've gotten their names. And so she goes to all the different ones. I can't remember all the names, but she finally gets to the bed, and before she even saw the book, she knew it was his bed. And she picked up the book, and it told the story of the character, and she found her PLB smashed along with her cell phone right by the bed. So she takes it, and she decides not to go back in and check on him. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to try and fix this. Fix this PLB. Um, he needs help. And she started to get really upset because she can't provide the care that he needs. So she goes to work on dealing with that PLB. And she also gets some eggplants and some other stuff to cook because the stove does work. There is solar power panels, but it's kind of grayish outside, so it's not as much sunlight. So she was happy that she could at least cook and have a hot meal. And then now she, of course, is like, okay, let me brace myself for the darkness because she doesn't know which Cass is going to wake up soon. So we switch back to Cass, and uh, it's about 5 days, I want to say, after um, what do I say? Vengeance on everyone that he carried out. He's back in his dream. Slash flashback, And he's guiding everyone to the cave, and no one paid attention to the fact that he hadn't packed anything. They just assumed he's coming. He gets them to the cave, and he's like, "Okay, you guys go now." They're like, "What? What do you mean?" You know? They're like, "No, we're not leaving you." They're like, "No, we're all going." And he's like, "No, you all need to leave. I need to take care of everything here." They, of course, were like, "We'll help you, like X, Y, and Z. But he's like, "Nope, you guys need to go. If they find this place full of dead bodies, they're going to come looking for us. And so he has our files. I've got to finish this." And he's like, he has an outside connect. Someone comes and brings delivery. So what if the call isn't made and someone comes looking? He's got to deal with that. He really wants them all to be free. And so Wes is dying and he winds up vomiting. He's like, "You got to get Wes to a hospital. He's going to die. He's not going to make it." He's like, "I'll find you guys. Don't worry about it." Of course, they're like, "How are you going to do that?" He's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll find you." And he runs back. So he spends the next couple of days digging a mass grave far away from the house, dragging the bodies, tossing them all in this mass grave. He felt damn near death. And by the end, he felt his brain cracking. Like he felt something in his psyche was breaking. And he just felt as evil as them because of all of, the killing he had done. And I felt bad for him. So he's cleaning up everything, he's bleaching up everything, scrubbing so hard, and winds up making himself bleed because he's trying to clean so much. Just a lot going on. I felt so bad for him because he did the right thing. Those people did not need to roam this earth anymore. They were hurting people for so long. But at what cost? He's the one that's taking on this burden even more so than the rest. It's heartbreaking. It's eerily quiet here. He's tormented at night. Um, the dreams feel like they've won. They're so real. It's awful. So Gemma goes into the dark and she sees him and she is afraid. She don't know who he's gonna be. And she's thinking about turning around, but he's like, "I know you're there." She goes in with the food. He's talking to her like he knows who she is. Um, and he's talking really nice to her. He thinks she's Quail. And she wasn't upset by this because it was like, listen, he cared for someone and that made her happy. Like, in spite of everything that was going on, he was able to care for people, like there's no jealousy with that for her. Um, at the same time, she did not want him to believe that she was someone else. And so she said, "Do you know who I am?" He shook his head a little bit and then he's like, "You're not Quail." And then what did he do? He started kissing her. She kissed him back. And then he thinks that what did she say to him? He thinks that she's what the genie granted him, that lifetime of happiness. And he's all like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to make you so happy." He's like, "My wish came true. I got rid of all the bad people in the house for his family so they could be free." He's like, "There was a third wish. I thought I didn't get my wish for happiness." And he's looking at her. He's like, "But I did." He's like, "You're it. You're my third wish." And she stiffened in his embrace because she was kind of like, "Uh-oh, when is he going to snap again?" And at the same time, she didn't want to leave him. So she decided she would just stay with him in the darkness. And she wound up going to sleep with him. And for that night, they were just two people that just went into the darkness. Cassine comes to. He's still floating between, dreams and reality. Or shall we say flashbacks and reality. And He does know where he is. He sees Gemma. He realizes Gemma's, he's like, oh my gosh, she's still here. And then he's like, she pushed me off the cliff. He starts rambling. He goes into another flashback. And we find out about a month after he had done the massacre, there were two or three men that came. He was getting ready to walk out and leave, right? And these men had guns. One of them had a beard, white beard. And so he ran, but eventually they caught him. They tied him up. They beat him, all kind of stuff. They proceeded, to try and get answers about what had happened. They asked what happened to the children, what happened to the guests, what happened to Stuart Page. He proceeds, they know he took them out, right? They know it. However, they want to know where those kids are. That's what it is. He wouldn't say anything, so they continue to beat him. And then the guy lets him know, you haven't done anything. There's many more of these places all around. And I'm like, oh shoot, you know? And he's thinking it's a good thing he memorized all of their actual information, and burned the files afterwards. So the guy goes on, tries to get him to talk. He doesn't. So the guy tells him, I'm going to give you something worse than death. And all he knows is he wakes up in a pile of piss and shit and all of the crap. Just disgusting. He floats back to the current, and he's decided the roles between them have reversed because she's seen him at his weakest. His family never saw him at his weakest. They would hear him cry out in his dreams, but he never cried in front of them. And so he's like, oh no, we got to reverse this shit back, right? She's the prisoner, not me. So he goes in and he gets something called the parable, which is this cuff, ankle cuff. And he decides he's going to get her not tied up, but he's going to cuff her with something. And so he latches on this cuff to her ankle. Gemma wakes up. She's fighting him. She's groggy at first, but then she realizes what he's doing, and she's like, oh no, I am not going back to being a prisoner. They have it out. He winds up hitting her in the chest, which knocked her back, and then he was able to latch it around her ankle, and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't go back to this, And he wanted to know what she had heard when he was unconscious, These past 2 weeks, going in and out. I want to know, what did you hear, And she didn't answer. He's like, you answer me now. So eventually she starts telling him, says the name Quail, and he's like, she tells him, you thought I was her. She brought up about, the bad things that happened to him, all this type of stuff. She said, she saw the books, Fables by Stuart Page. And so I was like, oh, so he wrote the Fables of Happiness. He wrote those books. I was like, oh my gosh, these twisted tales. So it's all, oh my gosh. So it made me think, okay, he gave them those names so they could fall into characters. I don't know. I don't know. Just so twisted. It's just so fucked up. She asked him if he was okay because he looked like he was about to pass out. And she tells him, I'll make whatever you want. I'll get you some vegetables, whatever. And he goes, don't tell me you've been helping yourself to my garden. He's like, you fucked us for winter. There won't be anything here, And she's like, I'm sorry, Cass. And then he remembers he had said that name while he was in one of those trances. And she goes, uh-oh, I fucked up. Because remember, he hadn't told her the name. He tells her, you cannot use that name ever again. He winds up taking her outside, telling her she's going to have to help him. and doing the gardening and stuff like that, but there's not enough time for the seeds to grow, just a whole thing. He's pissed. She tells him again, like, I know you're pissed and all this type of stuff. She's like, but I've been helping you. And he's still pissed at her. And she, of course, is like, if you let me go, I can go and get a doctor. I can get someone to help you. And he, of course, is like, that's never going to happen. And the last thing he said before he passed out is basically, you know, I'd rather die with you than die alone. That's just where he is now. He, that was just kind of it. Like, he now had this, after going so long of nothing, this was something, and he just was not willing to let it go. Um, and he passed out. Um, she, no, we learned for about a while, he drunk a ton of bourbon because his thoughts had gotten so bad. And then we also find out that after he had gotten beaten up by those guys, that he had amnesia for about 5 years. He didn't know who he was. So he's passed out. She's obsessing about what he said, you know, and she, of course, is pissed because, listen, she had carried this man up a damn, up all that damn, I don't know, rocks or whatever it was, and he's doing this. Well, thankfully, that makeshift stretcher she had made came in handy because she was able to roll him back on it and pull him into the library. Um, and then she's like, she's gonna leave. You know, it's the best possible choice. She's gotta go. It's like everything she does is making his life harder, so she's gonna leave, right? And so all of the food that she had in her backpacks, because he had brought the other backpack she had as well, she's gonna leave it for him. Um, and she's just gonna go ahead and go. So she cleaned up the kitchen because she could see that he was pissed off that it wasn't tidy, because he liked to keep the place very tidy, and clean. And so she's decided she's just gonna walk out this door and she's just gonna go into the night. Our boy Cass is standing right there when she's about to walk out, and he's like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Oh shoot!" So he had woken up while she was in there cleaning and stuff, and he felt like she was gonna leave. And so she was like, "It's just better for me if I go. I have people who are gonna be looking for me. She's like, I'll send help." He, of course, doesn't want anyone coming back because he remembers the threat that the guy with the white beard told him, which was, if we find out you're still alive, we're going to come back and finish the job. So he didn't want her telling anyone about him. And she's like, fine, if that's the way you want it, that's how it'll be. I'll worry about you every day, but fine. Well, that's not how it was going to go down for him. Um, Remember, he's read every book in that library 3 times over. So there's medical books in there. There's all types of books in there. So he knows that he can make her pass out if he hits her in the right place. So he did the whole thing of wanting to kiss her, right? But it allowed him to put his hands just where it needed to go so he can make her pass out. And so he's thinking about, that thing that he put on her ankle. It comes from Storymaker, and what had happened is he had gotten a bunch of lashings for giving food. He would steal extra food to give to his siblings, and he hooked him to the chain, which was hooked to Storymaker, so Storymaker would know whenever he made a move. So he's now done the same thing to her. The chain is long enough that she can help garden, she can go wherever she wants to in the house, but she cannot leave. And he knows that when she wakes up, she's going to hate him. Gemma comes to. She, of course, is like, what's happening? She smells carbonaro, but then she's like, how can I be smelling carbonaro? Like, she's just like, what is going on? Everything's very groggy. And then she sees Cass in the corner, and he's like, don't try to think too hard. Your brain's slowly waking up, you know. Tells her she might feel sick, all this type of stuff. And he says, you're here forever. She's like, that's not going to happen, X, Y, and Z. And then she sees the chain, and she's like, no, she's screaming. He tells her it'll be better for you just to accept what is. And so then she comes over to him, and he tells her, no, I'm sorry, he comes over to her, and he tells her, I meant what I said outside. I cannot go living without you again. I know you're going to hate me for this, but this is how it's got to be. I can't go through life now and you're not in it. It's just not going to happen. He's like, the only way for you out of here is if I die, you know. He said, and if you kill me, that would be perfectly fine with me, because that meant that I was tethered to you for the rest of my life. And the thing is worn around his waist. So again, every time she moves, he'll feel it. And she's like again, she's doing the whole I can't do this, but he's like, there's no option. This is it, you know. She's pissed off. And the truth that's freaking her out as well in her head is that she knows she wouldn't have been able to really leave. She would have come back. She would have tried to convince him to get help, something, you know. So then she starts eating, and she's pissed because she knows she's stuck. So Cass didn't sleep that night. He doesn't even know what room she slept in. He didn't go to sleep. Part of him was afraid that she would kill him, and he also didn't sleep because he was sitting in Storyteller's chair, and he felt himself about to pass out, and he went head first. Boom. He woke up. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He's hard as a rock. He wants relief, but he wasn't going to jack himself off. He wanted to be inside of her, so he went to go look for her. He was kind of upset that she hadn't even came to look in, on him, and it's like after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So he finds her. She's in the conservatory. She's looking at some old magazines, one of the gossip mags from 10 years ago that one of the guests had brought. She's not talking to him. He says, how long you think this is gonna last? It's silent treatment. She's like, as long as I want it to. She told him if he ever came near her, she had a knife that she had gotten from the kitchen and she'd stab him. So don't even try it. And he basically tells her, I'm going to give you a week. That's it. I'm going to give you a week. And after that, you're not going to be able to keep denying me. Now that I don't like, because now you're talking about taking it, And again, it's like, what that feels like. Why would you ever want to do that to somebody else? But I guess it's just like within, you're either going to lean into that or you're going to lean away from it. So it's been about a week. She has not talked to him at all, a full 7 days. And he is like, enough. He can't take this anymore. He's telling her he misses her, all kind of stuff. It's fucking, with her head, because she's trying to figure out, like, you know, how do I convince him to, you know, give me some freedom, and she's confused with the things that he's saying, because him saying I miss you, not hearing you, it's messing with her head, you know. And so they're going back and forth. He's saying all this sweet stuff to her, and he gives her a choice. He tells her, if you're going to kill me, do it right now. He leans into the knife she has, and he pushes himself to it, and he's like, just do it now, just get it over with. Because his thing is, I don't want to do all this work too, and then you wind up just killing me anyway. He's like, just do it now, you know? And of course, she can't. She can't do it. Um, and she knows that she's saying goodbye to her old life. She's clearly stuck here. And she just tells him, what is it that we have to do? We switch back to Cass. He thinks he might have schizophrenia. He just feels like he's a different person a lot of times. Um, he starts to think, what if I created all this stuff in my mind, you know? And then he's like, nah, that stuff felt too real, that awful, those awful things, you know? I don't think I could create that, you know? This really happened to me. Um, and he, of course, is afraid to tell her that he feels his mind is broken. He thinks she probably already knows that. Um, they're going to set traps, you know, to get small game. And they're going back and forth. They're arguing. They go to the lake. He tells her to take her clothes off. And in that moment, she looked at him and she was like, you think you're just gonna take it from me? He's like, no. He's like, we gotta go fix the generator. It's a hydro thing. And so he gets in the water, takes off his clothes. Well, she got wet because she had took her clothes off. She winds up taking them off. He has a flashback, and it's where one of the women, I forgot her name, she's one of the guests. She likes to ride the guys all night. She likes to torture them, all kind of stuff. She gives them Viagra, and she screws them all night. And so this was supposed to be someone else that was supposed to deal with her, but the guy, I can't think of his name, he freaked out so bad. Again, here comes Cass stepping up saying, I'll take the pain for you. And so she hadn't even let him pee, and so he wound up pissing on himself. And so she calls in story maker, and she's like, what am I supposed to do with this? He won't get hard. I can't play anymore, you know? And so she had shoved a dildo up his ass trying to make him hard again. Like, he doesn't like anal play. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Um, so he told her, well, Mr. Willoughby taught him how to jack off so he can get himself hard again. And sure enough, he takes the hand down because she had him tied up, and he starts to jerk off, and sure enough, he starts to get hard. But again, we see why it's so tainted for him and why he has such a problem. Um, while he's having this flashback, guess what he starts doing? Choking fucking Jim again. This is like the fourth time. And so she's trying to talk to him, and he finally realizes it's Gemma, but he done fuck, she's passed out. So he drags her back to the bank by the water. Um, and he did CPR. She coughed up the water. He felt so terrible. He could see, you know, how she lost weight. Before she was really toned, muscles, you know, stomach, you know, abs and everything. And now her stomach's caved in. She's not able to eat as much, you know. And so he winds up taking off the chain so he can get in the water to go fix the hydro generator. Because he's like, that still got to get fixed. Gemma comes to. She decides, you know what, fuck it. I'm gonna just lay my ass here. I'm not doing shit. I am tired. You know, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm just gonna lay my ass and enjoy the sun, bare naked. And so she winds up going to sleep, and she dreamed of being back in her lavender home, and she's there with the man she loves. She's kissing him and she's wanting more. So then we switch back to Cass. He goes fix the hydro generator. Thankfully, it was nothing but just a bunch of debris, and he removed that, and they're done. You know, so it's done. So that works out. He didn't have to use any tools and stuff like that. So that worked out. So he swims back, and he doesn't look over at first, because she, how did she do it? He was afraid if he looked, she wasn't there and that was going to destroy him. He eventually looked and saw her there, but she wasn't moving. And so he gets back over there and he's afraid he killed her, but he hadn't. She's asleep. And then he starts wondering if, what she's thinking about. And he's rock hard, but he's not going to fuck her. He decides he's going to eat her pussy. He's going to make her, he's going to give her pleasure. So he, licks her nipples and then he starts eating her pussy and she was enjoying it. She's in a dream though. And then he starts thinking about what if she's thinking about someone else, someone from her past. And he gets mad because he's like, she's not going to use me like that. She's not going to do that to me. And so then he starts kissing her and she's into it. And then she comes to and she screams, "Get off of me." And she was like, I can't believe you're about to take it from me. And he was like, I wasn't going to take it from you. I was just trying to please you. I was trying to tell you I was sorry for earlier what I did. That's all. That's all. And he's like, you can use me however you want, And I was like, oh my gosh. So he, of course, what did he say? Well, he knows he can't keep suppressing the memories. They're coming into his reality, but he can't stop it at the same time because he's not willing to talk about this shit. And she's trying to tell him, you need to try to remember these things. It'll help you. It'll lighten the burden. But he refuses to do it. And she lets him know what's going to happen is you'll wind up killing me and then you're going to be alone anyway and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. We also find out that her ass was actually dreaming of Cass being in her house. At first, she couldn't see the person's face, but then when she saw the eyes, it was him. So in the dream, she was thinking about him. So Gemma and Cass, they head back and they hear a scream, and it was a rabbit. So they got to the trap. He snapped the thing's neck. They get back to the house, and she's thinking, about what he did, and how with this place it looks like he tried to hide it with the vines, and he was like, "You're right. I did grow the vines so that I could hide it." And then she tells him, "Well, with the gutters, she's like, you need to clean those, otherwise the water is gonna go into the walls, and then you're gonna get mold and you'll get sick." And he got pissed because she used the word "you." She didn't say "we." And so for him, it's like, you're still trying to get away from me. And he got mad. And so he gave her the rabbit and was like, you cook it, you got an hour, all this type of stuff. And she's just kind of like, what is wrong with him? Why is he so pissy? And she actually said it to him, and he said, because you're still trying to leave me. You're still trying to find a way out, you know? And she's like, if you think I'm going to put my mother and brother, um, put you above them, I'm never going to stop fighting. She's like, you're crazy if you think I'm ever going to stop. And he didn't care. In fact, you know, it's just the idea that he's trying to get away from her. That's it. That's what's pissing him off. And here's the thing. You think about everything he went through, and you think, okay, he has a right to be selfish, but not at the expense of other people. Other people did this to you. She didn't do that. She shouldn't have to pay for that. You know? That's where he's wrong and where the shit is so fucked up. Because you keep trying to force her now to be somewhere that she doesn't. But see, here's the thing. She technically does want to be there with him because she said it herself. if she runs, she's not 100% sure that she's just going to really leave. She's afraid she's going to turn right back around. So I don't know. They both just a mess at this point. Cass is waiting for her to bring the food. He winds up passing out, going into another trance, and it's with some guy named Levin. This guy used to RAPE him all the time, would cut him up, do all kind of sick, twisted shit. And so the guy had gotten hot from fucking him, and so he opens the window. It's snowing, and Cass is at the floor, at the foot of the bed on the floor, about to be hypothermic, and so the Levin guy was like, "Can't let you die, because then Stuart's gonna be upset with me." So then he was like, um, "Come up here in the covers," all this type of stuff. So he went because he was freezing, and it was warmth. And then the guy's like, once you get warm, we can start playing again. So the guy starts jacking him off, and it feels good to him. And that was the first time that he had, felt good from one of them touching him. And he let himself come, but he's still in this trance. And so when Gemma brought the food, he smelled flesh. And we find out apparently they used to play with fire with these people. They used to burn them. It just gets more and more twisted as we keep going. And so he was like, this is not going to happen anymore, and he's not going to take it from this person. So he winds up taking it from Gemma, and she's telling him to stop, and he won't, and it's just fucking awful. I absolutely hated reading that. So we switch back to Gemma. Poor girl. um she knew he was having one of those nightmares and he wasn't present. She tried to hold his face and tell him it was her. It was just heartbreaking. Um, she had to face the fact that that's just a really broken man. I mean, good grief. So then Cass comes to, and it destroyed him when he realized what he'd done. He started beating the wall till he was bloody. He kept saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." He felt awful. He looked at her. He was ready for her to hate him, and she wouldn't do it. All she did was shrugged at him, and it just destroyed him even more. That was a hard portion to read. I didn't like it. I understand the whole thing of him not realizing it's her, but this still happened to her, and that just pisses me off. She's trying to calm him down. And then she tries to give him relief because he's still hard. So she tries to jack him off. He's still rock hard. And he was like, "Stop, stop with this kindness, stop." She hugged him. It freaked him out. It was just too much. He cried. It's just a lot going on. And he's like, "You're the one who should be needing comfort, not me. Don't you see what I did to you? Like, I can't believe I did that." And he was afraid. He's like, "This could happen again," all this type of stuff. And he's like, "I think about you all the time. I've been wanting to be inside you for a week. It's driving me insane." And she's like, I'll fix it." So she sits on his dick and fucks him and lets him come. So in that moment, he was like, "She's my new master. I'll do whatever she wants." She could take whatever she wanted from him. He didn't care. Um, she didn't find a release, and she was okay with that. And afterwards, he winds up telling her to leave, and she's like, "No, it's okay." He's like, "No, it's not okay. What I did is not okay. I can never forgive myself. You should never forgive me." He's like, "You gotta leave." He's like, "You gotta go before I do something worse to you." So they're having a back and forth about this. Eventually, she realizes there's no point, and she leaves. Um, well, she's not going, okay? She's somewhere else in the house. They're still tethered together. He wants to make this right. His mind keeps telling him, "You need to let her go." But he's like, he's a bastard. He can't do it. He can't lose her. So he decides to give her like this nice hot bath outside, which he does sometimes. And he had took one of the tubs a long time ago from one of the rooms, and he gets some firewood so he can make the bath hot. And he goes to the conservatory and tells her he's so sorry. And he starts thinking, that, what did he tell her? Something basically like, you're breaking me. The fact that she was able to forgive him, she shouldn't have been able to do that. And then at the same time, he was like, at this point, she can break me. She can do whatever she wants to do to me. I've completely fallen in love with her. He's saying this in his mind. He hasn't said this to her yet. He's just a goner. He apologizes again. And then he starts sucking her finger. She's getting turned on. And he was like, I just want to please you. I just want to please you. So he took her to the tub. And he's like, let me wash away everything I did to you. She's like, it's okay. He's like, no, it's not. Please just let me do this. He's like, please, let me please you. I'll do whatever you want. Um, I want you to know that for tonight, he's like, you're safe. Nothing will happen that you don't want to. We switch back to Gemma. She's freaking out. Eventually, she gets in the water. Um, he had blanked out for a second. It was a little spell, but he didn't like go crazy. He wanted to wash her hair, her body. She agreed. And she said, if I let you do this, then I want you to talk to me about your family and why they left and haven't come back and why you're here alone. And he said, I'll try. So she asked him what his favorite food was. He said he couldn't remember too much before he came here. She asked how many of them were there. And he said total of 9, and that included him. He confessed to her that for 5 years he had amnesia, that he had packed a bag, he was going to leave, but then he was afraid of the man with the beard was going to come back and he was going to find something that will put the others in danger and he just couldn't risk it. And that's why he stayed. And then she confesses she's upset with her brother because it's been over a month. And she's like, he should have been trying to find me by now. I would have ripped the world apart looking for him. And it pisses me off. And she also confesses to him that if he did come with an army, I don't know if I could leave you. And his chest burst because it was like, oh my gosh, she would choose me over her own family. And it just melted his heart. So, of course, um, he winds up wanting to please her. So he winds up fingering her. So he fingered her until she came. And then she pulled him into the tub because she's ready to fuck. And he had her face away from him. And she just took him all in one setting and he came super hard. She came hard after he pinched on her clit. He felt like he had died and gone to heaven. He never wanted to wake up. Um, he blanked out for a moment. He was starting to have a flashback, but he fought it. He was like, I am not going back there, not when I have this perfect moment in front of me. He fought it and he didn't go back into that trance. He did tell her that they couldn't sleep together because it was best for him, her too. It was for her to go because he's going to sleep in the dormitory. He can't sleep in the rooms. And we find out she thought the rooms were creepy too, and she didn't know why. Um, Before she knew everything about what had been going on there, and she chose the conservatory. And he was like, "Well, maybe next summer, you'll be able to sleep in there." And they probably still gonna have to sleep separately. So then there was a flicker of surprise that went across her face. It hurt him a little bit. At the same time, he was like, "She just got to get used to the fact that it's gonna be me and her." He's just not letting her go. So then she said goodnight, and so then they say goodnight to each other. Next morning, guess what? He doesn't remember anything about what happened last night. It hurt her. He was telling her like, you're being mean. Hold on. He's telling her, you're being mean to me. He's like, do you honestly think that I would not remember something like that? He's like, do you know how bad I want that with you? Like, if that happened, there's no way I would not remember it. He's like, that's a welcome memory. He's like, I remember all these other horrible things. I don't want to remember that. But something so perfect, I will remember it. And so she realizes he's just too broken. She's like, I need a minute. He's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to explode on you. She's like, I just need a moment. Don't follow me. I need to be alone. And she left. Cass is beating himself up trying to remember because he just can't remember this beautiful moment. He's like, I gotta remember this, you know? I've got to. And so she was, what did she say? He was like, she talked about that experience, and he was like, she couldn't have been lying. The way she described it, she felt it. He did have flashbacks of him and the kids wanting to run away before, and they had tried, and one of them got caught, and he got whipped to the point that his back was split open. And so that person still has nerve damage. And again, I can't remember all their names, and I wasn't going to try. Quail, they say her name enough, so I remember it. I don't remember the other ones. Um, he goes to the medical books. He's still thinking. He's like, this can't be schizophrenia because he's like, I can remember so much. This has got to be something else. And so he looks up, severe concussions, and it gives you bouts of amnesia where you start forgetting about your day. And you have to go through rehab because this can last for years. So Julia's going back and forth with what she needs to do. Of course, she wants to help him through this. It's hard. It's gonna be difficult. But she realizes that the sound she heard that first night when she was camping, that awful sound, it was him because she heard it that night. And I'm like, ugh, that's awful. So she realized, maybe this was instinctively she wanted to find where that sound came from and help him. And so, um, the last thing he does remember is when she pushed a knife into his heart. So that told her that he basically forgot about 24 hours. That's it. He remembers about trying to prep for winter, all this stuff, you know, but he's just missing those last 24 hours. And so she's like, I'm going to help him. She'll tell him whatever he needs to know. She'll do whatever he needs done to make this load lighter for him. He starts to get angry. She kind of tells him, well, if you don't like to talk, fine. There's enough stuff to be done. And she's like, we need to get your arm back in a splint so it can actually heal. You mess it up worse when you're punching the wall. And she also told him um, to like cut her loose from the tether. She's like, I vow to you I won't run. And he still was like, I'm not letting you go. So he's not going to let go of her and take that chain off. So they head out. They're heading out. He helped her. He was showing her how to deal with the potted plants and stuff. She was putting the seeds too deep. And she had told him, listen, I ain't got a green thumb, okay? He's like, no, you just have the wrong teacher. And so he just kind of told her, don't bury him too far. The light's got to be able to get to him. Just lightly cover him. She did it. Then they go looking for firewood. While they're on their way, all of a sudden he's having a flashback of when Storymaker had that parable, which is the chain that's tethering them together, and how he had told him if you cut that chain, um, how awful he was going to make his life basically in the lives of the others. And so the thing with the chain is it trips over everything. It's very inconvenient. And he knew it was too, but he still wasn't going to, cut it loose. He was honest with her too. He told her honestly he don't even know he doesn't remember where the key is. Poor baby. Doesn't remember. Well, she had an axe and she wound up chopping the chain. And she didn't run. Which she had told him she wouldn't, and she didn't. So they started kissing. He threw her up against the wall. He couldn't line his dick up, and he couldn't, take his hand and move his dick. And she just took his dick and put it inside of her. And they're fucking, and it's good and hard. And then he starts going blank. He couldn't see, like he's seeing white. And she, of course, was like, it's okay, it's just me. And he was like, this is not okay. He was like, look what happened. And she's like, look at yourself, look at your dick, like you're wet, I'm sorry, it's wet, which means I wanted it. And that made him happy, but he still wanted to keep her at a distance, because he was scared he was gonna go into a trance again. But she's like, nope, we got things to do, we're not gonna talk about this, we're gonna keep busy, we gotta go get this firewood. um he's like, okay, just keep your distance. She said, fine. I won't do anything to hurt you. She's like, I'm fine. So they get the firewood. He helped her more than he was supposed to. And he cooked for her and he sat with her and they ate. And he told her it might be best if she go ahead and leave. He's like, I'm not going to be mad. I release you from any promises that were made. Um, because he had wanted her to tell him everything if he forgot. Um, help him, with winter and stuff like that. But he's like, I release you from all promises. Go back home to your family. And then he leaves. She has a recorder that she had tucked in one of her backpacks. And she also had this itching to climb. So she took the recorder and looked at a video, and it was of her, her brother, and her mom, and it did something to her. She did miss her family. Cass was trying to think about everything, and he decided he was going to let her go. It was the right thing to do. He had to do it. He plans on not doing anything for Winter. He's going to let Winter take him. Then he starts hearing male voices, and it freaks him out because he's like, oh God, Storymaker 11. He runs to where she is, and he looks at the screen, sees his male voice, and he goes, who the fuck is this? And she's so carefree, she's so happy, and she says that's her brother, and he goes, like he's touching you, like he just gets so upset, and it's because he sees such happiness, and he's taking that from her. And so he was just like, I can't, I can't do this to her anymore. um they started kissing, and she wanted to fuck him, and it just got to be too much. She was talking to him, and it kind of sounded like the guest, because she was saying fuck me hard, like those are the things they would say. um and she doesn't know that. But he stopped it, and he was like, pack your stuff, I want you gone in the morning. And he ran off. Oh, and also he had a flashback. He remembered when he took her, when he took it, and he remembered it, and it destroyed him. And he's like, he could do that. The fact that he did that to her, it ripped him apart. So she goes running after him, can't find him. She winds up coming up to some cave, and then she hears boots, and she's thinking it's it's Cass. But then she goes, wait a minute, he wasn't wearing boots. And then someone appears, and they have like two different color eyes. And the person says, you found him before I could. And she's like, who are you? And he's like, no, the question is, who are you? And then he grabbed her and told her, because he had made a noise when he saw the thing that was still around her leg. So even though, she chopped the chain off, but the thing still stuck around her leg. Um, he tells her, you're going to answer my questions. And if I don't like what you say, this is going to be a good night for you to die. And that's how book 2 ends. So next week, we're going to dive into the final book, book 3. What did you all think of this? It's so difficult for me. It's like I like the story, but I hate it at the same time because of the things that happened to him and those kids, and what he did to our girl Gemma. It just, oh. But let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the links are going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.